Picture this: a cramped Soho attic, January cold pressing at the windows. A painted wooden head stares into blinding lamps while machinery chatters like teeth. John Logie Baird bends over wires, sleeves loose, hair untidy. On a receiver nearby, the dummy's face trembles into life, pale as a seance. On January 26, 1926, Baird gave the first public demonstration of working television at 22 Frith Street in Soho, London. The invited witnesses included members of the Royal Institution gathered in Baird's rooms to see whether moving images could truly travel by electricity. This was not television as furniture, no sofa, no remote, no evening schedule, just spinning discs, hot lamps, wires, and a face almost there. English Heritage identifies Frith Street as the site where Baird demonstrated television and later earned a blue plaque for that breakthrough. The room smelled of warm dust and singed insulation. Every successful flicker felt temporary, as if the future might vanish when the motor slowed. Baird was born in Helensburgh, Scotland, in 1888, long before the word television meant anything ordinary to ordinary people. He was not the grand industrialist of legend. He was a restless experimenter chasing an idea that sounded almost foolish until it worked. By 1922, Baird had begun serious experiments in transmitting moving images, building toward the public proof he would stage in Soho. He worked with whatever he could afford. Improvisation was not romance here. It was necessity dressed in solder, cardboard, and stubbornness. Baird's early television was mechanical, built around scanning discs rather than the electronic systems that would later dominate broadcasting. Imagine turning a face into slices of light, one strip, then another, so quickly the eye forgives the violence done to wholeness. Before the public demonstration, Baird transmitted images of a ventriloquist's dummy named Stooky Bill, and office worker, William Taynton. Why a dummy? Because Stooky Bill could endure the glare. He did not blink, sweat, complain, or flinch from the lamp's bite. On October 2, 1925, Baird transmitted a television image with tonal gradation from Frith Street, a crucial step beyond silhouettes. Whisper. For a moment, the machine did something uncanny. It did not merely signal. It showed a face with shade, movement, and presence. William Edward Taynton, a young office worker downstairs, became one of the first human subjects Baird used for televised images. Taynton later remembered Baird racing downstairs in baggy flannels, carpet slippers, and no socks, asking for a human face to replace the dummy. Think about that. The first age of screens did not begin with celebrities. It began with a worker pulled upstairs from an office. The Soho demonstration is widely recognized as the first public demonstration of a working television system before scientific witnesses. The Times reported the images were faint and often blurred, yet confirmed movement and detail could be transmitted and reproduced instantly. That sentence matters. Faint and blurred was not failure. It was enough proof to make disbelief loosen its grip. The image was a promise, not a product. A moving shadow saying, "Someday, distance will have a window." Baird called his apparatus the televisor, a name attached to the fragile machine that made those first moving pictures visible. No orchestra played. No crowd roared. The birth of television sounded more like a motor fighting friction in a rented room. Mechanical television worked by taking motion apart. The disc scanned a subject, point by point, translating light into electrical variation. The BBC's centenary account describes Baird's system as mechanical, contrasting it with the electronic approach that soon overtook it. The machine converted brightness into signal, then signal back into brightness. It was crude, but the logic still echoes through every screen. On the receiver, the face did not appear whole at once. It assembled itself, line by line, like a ghost learning its features. Our eyes did the final work. Human perception stitched the fragments together and called the result a person. English Heritage quotes contemporary reporting that the televisor could transmit and reproduce the details of movement instantly. A century later, that claim feels modest. In the attic, it was thunder. Movement had escaped the room without the body following. The BBC marked the 100th anniversary of television by returning to the story of Baird's early demonstrations and their consequences. Every video call, live stream, broadcast, and breaking image carries a faint inheritance from that attic, the hunger to make faraway events present. In 1927, Baird demonstrated television over 438 miles of telephone line between London and Glasgow. Now the image was not just crossing a room. It was crossing Britain, riding ordinary telephone infrastructure toward an extraordinary new purpose. In 1928, Baird achieved the first transatlantic television transmission, sending pictures between London and New York. That same year, he also demonstrated color television and stereoscopic television, pushing far beyond the dim monochrome image people expected. These were not side quests. Baird kept asking the same dangerous question: if an image can travel, what else can travel with it? But invention is rarely merciful. The pioneer who opens the gate does not always own the road built through it. When the BBC launched regular television service in 1936, it initially used both Baird's mechanical system and EMI Marconi's electronic system. The BBC television service began from Alexandra Palace on November 2, 1936, placing television into an official broadcasting framework. By early 1937, the BBC had dropped Baird's mechanical system, choosing the electronic approach for the future of television. Softly. That is the ache inside the story. Baird was right about the future, but not forever right about the machine. He opened a door, then watched others widen it with different tools. That does not shrink the opening. The BBC's account frames the shift as a competition between Baird's mechanical television and the stronger electronic system from EMI Marconi. The public often remembers Invention as a single spark. Usually it is a relay, prototype, demonstration, rivalry, standard, habit. When you hear an invention story, consider watching the prototype. It may reveal the fear, risk, and imagination hidden by later success. Stooky Bill was not glamorous. His painted eyes and rigid grin made the future look eerie before it became familiar. Taynton's face mattered because it was human. A person, not a prop, crossed the threshold from physical presence into transmitted image. English Heritage records Taynton as the young assistant whose face helped Baird prove that television could show living movement. Plaques can make events feel tidy, but upstairs, the truth was messy. Heat, impatience, fragile parts, and witnesses deciding what counted as proof. The University of Strathclyde has highlighted the centenary as a global milestone tied to Baird's Scottish origins and London demonstration. The centenary is not just a victory lap. It asks us to remember how strange the obvious once looked. Imagine carrying a century of screens back to that attic. Sports finals, moon landings, coronations, disasters, faces from wars, families calling home. Baird would recognize the desire before the devices, the old wish to defeat distance, to see without being there. If stories like this help you see familiar inventions differently, consider liking and subscribing. It helps more curious listeners find the past behind everyday things. The attic also warns us. Today's awkward prototype may be tomorrow's ordinary object, dismissed until it suddenly changes the room. Contemporary observers describe Baird's pictures as faint and blurred, a reminder that the first proof of a future can look unimpressive. Faint and blurred is how many futures arrive, not as polished products, but as unstable glimpses that ask people to look twice. If you want to remember the hinge, remember two faces: Stooky Bill, unblinking, and William Taynton, blinking under heat and history. There is a temptation to call Baird's system a dead end. Technically, that is partly true. Historically, it misses the pulse. Machines that fail commercially can still rearrange imagination. They teach the world what to expect, then disappear behind the expectation. Baird's mechanical path narrowed, but the habit he forced on the world widened. Expect pictures from elsewhere, instantly and routinely. The BBC places Stooky Bill and William Taynton in the crucial 1924 to 1925 experiments that preceded the public demonstration. One face was wood, one face was flesh. Together, they made the new visual age feel both magical and slightly haunted. Haas, that pairing feels almost too perfect, the dummy who could withstand the machine and the worker who made the machine matter. Television would become authority, entertainment, propaganda, witness, comfort, and noise. But first it had to become believable. In that first public breath, belief did not arrive cleanly. It flickered, stuttered, blurred, and still changed what people thought possible. English Heritage marks Frith Street as the London address where Baird's television work became visible enough to enter public memory. Stand outside now and the city barely pauses. That is how futures work. They become background, then ask to be noticed again. A dummy blinked. A worker sat under the lamps. A machine shivered. And for the first time, the future looked back.